Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another devlog. It's been a hot minute since an actual one, so this one's just going to be going over a bunch of random features that I've implemented and kind of going over my methodology and trying to be a little more in depth than usual. So, hopping right into things, we're going to go into the sticks real quick. We're going to look at some of the changes to the 3D UI. So, 3D UI has been something that I've wanted to implement for a while. I just find it's really cool in whatever games it's put in. And if you play the game, you probably have noticed it exists in the Fabricator. And if you've played the game, you also know that the Fabricator's UI is absolute hot fucking dog shit. And extremely janky and buggy and, like, non-functional. As of now, this is now actually fixed. And it now works much better. You can use it without having to do this jank in order to punch down and unlock your mouse. You don't even have to unlock your mouse in the first place. And this was a bug that I was grappling with for probably the whole time I've been working on this game, because I've been trying to get this to work for God knows how long. And so this is hopefully going to help people who also have the same problem. The issue is pickability. And a weird quirk, well, not really a weird quirk, but a quirk of all collision objects in Godot is they have this property called ray pickable, which basically means if your mouse is hovering over them, basically means they just get notified when the mouse enters and exits them on the screen. So, for example, if this little thing, I should stop moving stuff around for Reddit. You see this cube, if my mouse goes in there, because if it's ray pickable, then it'll know that. And the issue is that this is by default set to true. And when it's true, it will eat any input events, any mouse input events that it receives, which means that they could not get to the 3D UI in order to send it to the UI panel and, actually interact with it. This meant that you could only interact with the panel when, like, your mouse, when your camera, was separated from the player, which is why I had the hunch panel system. And the reason why that had to happen was when you're hunched down, the camera is separated from the player. And what was actually happening was the mouse, the ray that was going to this thing that's trying to interact with it, was colliding with the player collision box and the rigid body detector box, which meant that, it was eating the input and it couldn't be sent to the 3D UI panel, which sucked ass. Now, another problem that I encountered while working on this was it only worked with the unlocked mouse, but as you can see, right now it's working with the locked mouse just fine. And in order to fix that was another really janky fix, and that's this mouse picker raycast object, which effectively is just simulating a mouse ray, except it functions just all the time. So yeah, it's a bit of a mess, but it works surprisingly well, all things considered. And there's definitely some tweaks I want to make, but right now it's way more intuitive and way less of a pain in the ass. So I'm going to probably be releasing an update solely for that sooner rather than later. All right, next thing, Noisemapped textures. You may have noticed Sticks looks a little scuffed, a little burnt up almost. This is a technique called triplanar noise mapping. It's really just triplanar textures. So this is something that I've noticed games like Deep Rock Galactic do to try and break up the otherwise solid colors on their texture, on their models, is they apply a little faint bit of noise in order to just break up those solid colors. In my case, the way that I'm doing this is with cellular noise as a base layer. You can see like those polygonal shapes, that's cellular noise, and then combine that with a simplex noise layer, which I then use as a mask and color burn it on top of the cellular noise, which effectively is a way to, that's a bit of a scuffed way to make repeating textures not be repeating and be more seamless. So yeah, that is something I might apply to more things, but the other method that I might do for visual pizzazz in the otherwise stale ships is this. So this is the AC220's second facelift to date. The more astute of you may notice a certain thing about this, and that's because the textures here are done using a trim sheet. If you don't know what a trim sheet is, basically it's a texture that contains a bunch of other textures that you can kind of copy and paste into a model. So in this case, this is a Sticks model that I was messing around with and trying to use a trim sheet. Here it's a work in progress, but you can see the gist of it overall. And let me just open up one of the trim sheets that I was working on this one. I use this thing called GrabDoc to render it. You can find it for free on their GitHub, and just look it up. And basically, I take this model, I model out a bunch of fucking details and stuff, and then we go through and get the normal maps, reference maps, and a bunch of other stuff, And what that means is I can have one texture or one material that I use for a shit ton of stuff. And in Godot, that's huge because of how the clustered rendering works. Generally, the gist of it, though, is it forces me to keep a cohesive art style and allows me to just have nice PBR materials without killing my computer. So yeah, I will probably be transferring this to other ships sooner rather than later. This is the AC220 with that trim sheet applied to it. I've also done a bunch of other graphical overhauls to this ship. Notably, there's a slight volumetric fog effect you might notice. There's proper light map textures and reflection map textures. This is the first time I've combined both of those, and I have to say, I think it actually looks really, really good. It's a nice combination of matte lighting and also reflective lighting for a very, very low performance cost. Combine that with a little fog and some dust particles that I was messing around with, and it's genuinely looking really fucking good. I was inspired by one of the Godot lectures that was sent to me by Linda on the Discord. It's like describing how trim sheets and fancy visual effects can be used to make Godot scenes actually look kind of decent. Now, Godot still struggles with large-scale dynamic scenes. Will never not be bad at that. I think that's just a downside of most game engines in general. But yeah, that's an unfortunate side effect of just how Godot's rendering engine is designed. But hey, at least the insides of ships can look really nice. I'm not sure if I'm super happy with the color scheme here. I might end up replacing it with that black carbon trim sheet you saw, or maybe modify this one to be a little darker, because I feel like I liked the silvery, more like industrial aspects of it, but I like the way this is going. Tell me if you guys like this visual look, though, because if so, I might keep it. Anyways, moving on to another thing that I was working on, quests. So, quests have been a thing that I've been trying to implement for a while. I've been meaning to implement for a while. Like, they're a very important part of, actual gameplay, which this game doesn't have a lot of, to be perfectly honest with you. And effectively, the approach that I've opted to take is very modular. If my computer breaks again, I'm going to be really fucking pissed. Big surprise, it fucking broke. Hold up. Okay. Let's actually show off the quest system and the Lanar thing. So you can see up there, might be a little scuffed to see. It says new quest accepted, tested quest. Crazy stuff, I know. And we have tested quest, we have some random shit. It says objectives exist. Yeah. And grab some stuff. So these are the objectives right here. They're modular, meaning that you could pick between a couple ones like progressive objectives that have like you need to do it X times, or just a checkmark objective. Generally, and the way that you advance them is utilizing a global event system, where effectively you can emitting signals with certain tags attached to them will progress certain events. I've made it as modular and as simple as possible just to try and make it as easy to create long and complicated quest lines shit as I possibly can. Honestly, it's surprisingly simple and pretty elegant. So real quick, if I press my flashlight button, which will trigger exist, you can see now it's checked. If I start picking up some items, you can see now we're at 4 out of 5. I've grabbed some stuff. If I drop an item and pick it back up because I haven't implemented that check yet, you can see we finished it. Yippee! Crazy. Now that doesn't actually do anything yet, but that we'll get there, and hopefully before the next update I'll have a couple things for you guys to do. Alright, last thing I want to take a look at real quick is the Reactor core thing. Okay. So the Reactor core, it's a prop that I've added that's similar to the Lanar fuel duct prop, but it actually has a purpose and a function. This was more so just to add a little more tactility to the existing systems. So you can see it back here. Oh yeah, also these have some sound effects. Nice. It's not my favorite. I was looking for something along the lines of one of the Subnautica sound effects. Anyways, so this big boy thing is required. You need to throw in a Reactor core. You can see if we pop the Lanar right now, it's not actually doing anything. And that's because we need to throw a Reactor core in there. And that's this item right here, a Lanar reaction core. And if I just pick this up real quick and toss it in here, I have a smooth animation. We could take it back out if we want to. And effectively what this is just that. It's a additional step in the process of the startup. I'll probably make it in there by default just to make it a little less of a pain for people who are new to the game or don't want to interact with that. But I'll also be adding a system where these can either burn out or be exchanged for better ones for extra power. We'll figure that out. But yeah, that's about it for now. I apologize for the weird random cuts. Yeah, my computer's been on the fritz like fuck. I need to get a new one very soon. This thing is dying. And yeah, that's about it.